Hello, everyone. How's it going? Can you hear me okay? Yay, hello. All right. Thank you for joining. Today, we are going to be talking about how to animate a walk cycle. Woo, yay. Wow. Today, we're going to be talking about how to animate a walk cycle as well as how a walk cycle can inform you, the viewer, about a character's personality. So first things first, I want to ask, looking at these two characters on the screen, do you think that they would walk the same? That is not a rhetorical question. I'm asking for real. Do you think that they would walk the same? Anthony says yes. I don't even know if there's anyone else in the chat to say yes or no. But but Anthony says yes. Um, Unfortunately, Anthony, you're wrong because they actually wouldn't walk the same. Um, But there's a reason for that. There's a reason as to why they would not walk the same, and that is that these animators are trying to communicate two very different things about these two very different characters, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Kessa Dryberg, and today I'm going to be talking about how to animate a walk cycle, like I said, and how a walk cycle can express a character's personality. The first thing that we need to understand, though, before we talk about that, is we need to talk about what a walk cycle is in general. So, a walk cycle is a looping animation of a character taking one full step. According to Disney animator Hiram Osmond, who is known for being the head animator on Moana, walk cycles are usually used in the pre-production stage of an animated film, meaning that you are probably not going to see a walk cycle like this on the big screen, like in a final product, but it will probably be used when the animators are still figuring out the answers to questions like, what is the film going to look like overall? What are the characters going to look like? What are the characters' personalities like? How are they going to interact with each other as well as the rest of the world around them? Stuff like that. So, while a walk cycle may seem complicated, it can actually be broken down into 5 key poses. And these key poses are the contact pose, the down pose, the passing position, the up pose, and the second contact pose. And this concept comes from the Animator's Survival Guide, which was written by Richard Williams, by the way. Very good resource. Pretty much every single animator uses it. And this is the way that most people approach walk cycles. So with these 5 poses, you can already see the walk cycle kind of starting to come together. But there are a couple more things that we need to do before it can actually be considered finished. One of those things is we need to choose the tempo. In order to understand how you are supposed to choose what tempo you want your walk cycle to be set to, we need to understand a little bit more about how animation works in general. So the way that animation works is that you are not actually watching like something moving on the screen. The way that animation and all video in general works is that you are actually looking at a series of images that are shown back to back, and they're shown so quickly that your brain tells you that whatever you're looking at is moving, whereas in reality it's not actually moving. They're all just still images. So industry standard in the animation industry is to have animated films run at 24 frames per second. So that means that whenever you're watching an animated film, chances are you are watching 24 individual frames going by every single second. So if we're animating at 24 frames per second, then that means that the average choice that most animators make when choosing their tempo is to either have the steps be animated on 16s or be animated on 8s, which means that one step would occur either every 16 frames or 8 frames. The reason why these specific numbers are chosen is because it's really easy to divide the 5 poses into those numbers. So in the case of animating on 16s, one pose would happen every 4 frames, whereas with 8s, one pose would happen every 2 frames. So it's really easy to just say, okay, this pose goes here, count 4 frames, this pose goes here, count 4 frames, etc. You can also go as fast as animating on 4s, which means that the step would take 4 frames, or you could go as slow as animating on 32s, which means that each step would take almost a second and a half, but that is up to the individual animator and what the necessities of the cycle is. So here's a quick example that I made. As you can tell, there's the 5 key poses, the up, down, passing, or sorry, contact, down, passing, up, and then the second contact. And when you fill in the in-betweens, it makes a little animation. So I am still a student, so you can probably tell that this isn't absolutely perfect. But there are a couple of choices that I made to try and make this character, a little bit more like interesting. I made him walk a little bit off balance. And choices like those are choices that animators make all the time in order to add more personality to their characters. So, as you can see on this slide, here are a bunch of examples of different choices that animators made in order to create a bunch of different characters. I really like Baymax's walk cycle as a place to start. He's the guy down here at the bottom. So his stride is really, really small. I think that's the first thing that you kind of notice about him, is that his steps are not that big. And because of that, in conjunction with like the rest of his body, he essentially waddles from side to side. And this makes his character look really sweet, really like non-threatening. And that is the entire point as to why he was made. So it makes sense as to why his walk would also be very non-threatening and very cutesy. Another thing you could look at is like the way that his arms don't move at all, especially when compared to Miles's walk cycle in the upper left. Miles is a human, so his arms are naturally going to move a little bit when he's walking because that's how most humans walk, whereas Baymax is a robot, so he really doesn't need to move his arms to balance. And the animators had to think about that, and they made that decision. Another example would be in the upper right, there's this kind of demo reel going on of the Zootopia walk cycles, and a lot of them are very different. I really like the camel one because his neck kind of like leads his walk, which is something that you're not going to see with most other characters, especially humans, because our heads are above us, whereas with this camel, his head is in front of him. So he is leading his walk forward, which is really interesting. So, excuse me, as we return back to our 2 main characters, hopefully you can see now that there are a lot of different things that these animators chose in order to communicate hypermasculinity on the left and hyperfemininity on the right. So in Jotaro's case, he has very solid steps, his posture is kind of slouched, his shoulders are moving a lot more than his hands because his hands are in his pockets, and all of that is to communicate that he is a very strong but like very relaxed guy. And they even added a little bit of like 2D animation in conjunction with his steps to give his steps even more impact to make him look even stronger. And then when you look at Manat on the right, she's from Street Fighter V, I think. Her walk is completely different. I mean, her heels, I don't think ever touch the ground. Somebody in the chat says that they do, but I don't think that they do. I'm looking closely, and I really don't think that they do. Which is really funny because that essentially is like she's wearing high heels, sort of, even though she's not actually wearing high heels. So that gives her a very feminine look. Her body is like really, really curvy, like her chest is out, her butt is out, like they want you to see that she is a very curvy woman, like all of that. Her arms are not by her sides, they're like kind of out, like daintily. I think it's really funny. I love this walk cycle because I think it's hilarious, but it's also a really great example of how you can make a character look hyper feminine without her ever having spoken like a single word. So I hope that you've learned a lot from this presentation. And I hope that next time you see a walk cycle, you not only understand how that walk cycle was made, but you also understand the choices that the animator made in order to communicate an idea about that character. Thanks. Let's go. Another successful stream. Any questions from any chatters? Totally first try. Yeah, this was definitely my first try at this. All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, I'm going to end the stream here. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening and learning about animation with me. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys later. Bye bye.